So, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Zena, for that lovely introduction. And welcome to this conversation this morning about game-changing innovation. I'm Helen Westendorp, and I founded Treehouse about 17 years ago. Feels like 5 minutes. So, Imaginate is all about game-changing innovation. But that does beg the question, if game-changing innovation is what you're after, what game are you in? What game are you playing? And imagine if innovation didn't just improve the game, but rewrote it. So Imaginate has been used in defence, in academia, and in business to deliver breakthroughs in really high stakes environment where lives are on the line and company profits and customer delight are on the line as well. We were asked to produce a methodology that would be repeatable, consistent, and have real rigor at the heart of it. And what this process has been able to deliver are life-saving protocols in Afghanistan, academics able to submit funding proposals and secure multi-million pound funding grants, and immersive future artifacts for senior decision makers. But before I take you into the detail of Imaginate, I want to share my story. I am one for a challenge. So the reason I went to the University of Bristol is because I found chemistry a challenge and they did the best chemistry course I could find. I'm a chemist. And then 20 years on, I'm helping organisations such as the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, DSTL, come up with game-changing innovation. What happened in between? Well, I didn't go on and do chemistry as a career. I didn't want to be a bench chemist. I decided I wanted to be in a hub type position in an organisation. And I joined marketing, which is a strange move from chemistry to marketing. I decided I wanted to set myself a challenge. There we go again. And I decided I wanted to be on the board of a UK company by the time I was 30, which looking back seems ridiculous, but I did make it by the time I was 32. But because I'd set my goal as being a ladder, I got to the point in the ladder and actually I didn't really enjoy what it was like when I got there. Um, so I changed my view of how a career should be and actually started to follow things I found really interesting. And I had a real curiosity about how people think differently, how people go about coming up with innovation. So I left that job and I conducted some primary research on people who are creative and how they go about being creative. So I interviewed a neuroscientist, how the brain works, a mathematician, a cold case detective, a Russian gangster's associate. And reassuringly, I found there was quite a lot of similarity between the cold case detective and the Russian gangster's associate. I found that strangely reassuring. But from that whole group of different experts, shall we say, I drew some common threads, a process, a set of tools, and some behaviours, and that became our first creative thinking methodology, the triangle. Um, what then happened is that I popped that in a drawer, went and did something else, popped out a baby, and then I had a chance conversation with someone from Porton Down. And this guy, Steve, he said, I've from Russian nuclear disarmament negotiations, as you do. And I'm now the innovation manager for the Counterterrorism Centre, which is now part of DSTL. And he said, I don't know anything about innovation. And I said, oh, I did some work on that a while ago. So he said, right, come down to Porton Down and come and tell me about it. So I turned to Porton Down, never been there before, big military policeman with enormous guns. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? Anyway, I went in, I saw him, his boss, and his boss's boss. And they said, we really like this. Could you train us on it? And I sat there and I went, yes, thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? And then on the drive back, I phoned one of my former colleagues, Sarah, and I said, this has just happened. Do you want in? And she said, absolutely. So that's where Treehouse was born 17 years ago. So we did our first training for a group of 15 in the counter-terrorism centre. They liked it so much, they scaled it to the whole CT centre. So that was 120 people. And then they were absorbed into DSTL, and that started our 17-year partnership with DSTL. The thing I'm most proud of is that we did some work with them to help think about how to counter insider threat. So, if you're not familiar with the term, insider threat is where you have someone from inside your organization who is causing you a threat. And at the time, we were in the war on terror in Afghanistan, and our troops were training the Afghan police on how to take hold of their own security when we withdrew. Now, the Taliban infiltrated the Afghan police, posing as police, and they got onto our bases and wearing suicide vests or Kalashnikovs or whatever caused some serious activities. And I can't tell you how many people died as a result of insider threat because it's classified, but it's a scary number. So a big issue with insider threat. And we worked with DSTL on how to create new protocols, ways of identifying and countering insider threat. And after they were implemented, there were no further fatalities as a result of insider threat. So I have to say the hairs on the back of my neck still raise when I talk about that. I used to sell beer and chocolates, and now this is much more meaningful for me. And actually, that work has gone on and has been adopted by counterterrorism police in here and in other countries as well. And as a result, I was awarded the DSTL's Gold Award for Innovation. Now, it looks quite big there, but DSTL is stuffed full of introverts. They don't go big on awards. This is the award. It's quite small, but at least it's gold. I'm really chuffed with that. That's the one that means the most to me. So DSTL then, I've worked with him for a number of years in secure classified situations. But they then said, look, we are trying to work out what to put into our future research program. And the way we do that is by looking at science and technology signals. We look at S&T signals to give us clues as to what capability we might need in the future, or what capability our adversaries might gain that we need to be able to counter. But they said we're really not very good at being able to choose signals, the right ones, and get them into our research programs. So they said, we want to commission you, building on the work you've done with Treehouse and the Triangle and all of our activity. We want you to create a methodology that consistently, repeatedly, and predictably generates game-changing innovation. So they commissioned us to produce that methodology, and we took a series of signals, hundreds of signals that were just creating noise, and turned that, filtered it, refined it, worked with them, imaginated with them, and turned them into game-changing concepts. So we had to pilot that and to prove it worked as well. So Imaginate was born. Imaginate consists of 4 games, and Sparks, Jackanory, Questions, and Popcorn. So Sparks is where you broaden thinking using various stimuli. Jackanory is where you develop and refine narratives through a specific iterative process of feedback and narrative creation. Questions is where you ladder and define really crisp how-to questions. And then popcorn is probably the ideation process that most people are familiar with. It's that kind of idea generation tools to get ideas to pop. Then you cluster them, you vote on them, and you visualize your winning concepts. Today, I want to focus on the first part of that, which is Sparks. So where do you get your creative spark? It can start from three places. Each of them has a story. So first of all, let's talk about the top one, science and technology push. As I've mentioned, DSTO had hundreds of science signals, and Imaginate filters them, frames them, and turns them into concepts such as adaptive armor, chemical computing, or anti-icing coatings. Now, I'm going to refer to my signals book to throw some S&T signals at you. Now, all of the information I'm going to share today is open source and is not in the DSTL program, so I'm not revealing anything classified. Let me just share with you the one that led to chemical or could lead to chemical computing. So this is a fluorescent probe. It's a molecular probe distinguishing between mercury and copper ions that could be used as a logic gate in a chemical computer. Now, chemical computing might sound a little odd when we've got all the computing we probably need, but just last week, the solar flare that caused some issues with Airbus planes. A solar flare is an electromagnetic pulse, and that can interact with negatively computer systems and software, and that's the issue that Airbus has found. So if you can create a computer that isn't relying on electricity, but that could rely on chemicals, chemical reactions to form the logic switch, that even in those situations where you can't use electrical signals, even a chemical computer that's really slow could be really helpful. So that's one example of a science and technology signal that has been used or could be used for chemical computers. Another one would be anti-icing coating. So there's a FSIDI, which is a fracture promoting ultra slippery ice detachment interface inspired by skin. So the idea would be to take this, put it on things that need to operate in cold environments, and then it sheds ice. And that's a really big deal because there are places you can't go or technology you can't use in environments that are very cold. And you know yourself, when you turn up to the airport and they're saying, no, there's a delay because we're de-icing the plane, you've experienced that because ice on planes can bring them down. So having something that sheds ice is a really big deal. Those signals have not gone forward. These are not ideas that I'm sharing that are classified in any way. So that is, as you can imagine, a really big deal. Using a spark that starts off with S&T push can be really productive. The second type of spark is inside led. And let me talk you through a story on how we experience this ourselves at Treehouse. So we do a lot of executive training and coaching for quite a lot of big defence companies. And that's all well and good. The big executives, they get programs that may be 7 or 10K per person. And the L&D manager there was saying, you do some great work and I really love what you do with our executives. But by the time we've done that and then given everyone their health and safety and their mandatory training, actually there's not an awful lot else for everyone else in the organisation. Plus, when I'm planning the forward year, how do I know who to spend the money on? Is it the person who shouts loudest? Is it the person who's got the most strategic program? How do I determine where to spend my L&D budget? Even within my executive community, how do I determine who to give these big programs to? So what I did was create a future scenario that would look at democratizing development. I took that insight about fairness or lack of fairness about L&D budget and lack of accessibility of really high quality L&D and turned that into a future scenario of democratized development. And then I pitched an idea to Innovate UK. They gave us almost £200,000 worth of investment to produce a product called Unlocked. And what it does is it supports our L&D team to assess capability, what people have now and what they need in the future, objectively using multiple sources. It assesses that capability and identifies the gap, and then helps deliver development activities that can get them from where they are now to where they need to be, objectively, fairly, and cost effectively. So that for me was all about being insight led and unlocked. It's soft launched now, so it's out there with our friendly clients, and we're launching it for real on the 5th of January. If you'd like to get in touch to find out more, you'll get the numbers at the end. And then the third area of spark of creativity is what we call future world pull. So at the bottom here. And what we've done is create a museum of the future. So the left-hand picture you can see there is the virtual reality atrium of our museum of the future. And on the right, you can see one of the artifacts. Now, the reason for doing this is that quite often senior decision makers make decisions in the context of today, not of the context of tomorrow. And in the military, they're fighting the last war, not the next one. So how do you put people in the future so they can make decisions in the context of tomorrow? Well, this is about creating an artifact, an immersive artifact that can help them live in that future world, that future scenario for a bit. So one example I can share with you, again, this is fictional. It's not actually what we did with them, was create an immersive kit that would put secret messages into someone's DNA. So the kit that they experienced was how to do that. Obviously, it's all fictional. And they would sort of undo the case, look at these strange, injectors and slides and messaging on how you profile messages and get them into someone's DNA. And then literally the human carrier would go off and then it would be decoded at the other end, obviously fictional. But what that immersive artifact did was put people in a future scenario where life is very different. And therefore, when you're presenting them with real concepts, they are making decisions in tomorrow's context, not the context of today. So those are three creative sparks: S&T push, insight led, and future world pull. But it does beg the question, who are the people that help you play the innovation game? So we've defined 4 roles of people that play the innovation game with you. So we have an Imagineer. This is a creative connector. This person is selected for each project, or these people are selected for the project based on what we need to do in that project. So, for example, in a defence setting, it was someone who maybe is an advanced physicist or an advanced chemist, and also who knows a bit about defence and is very creative. So, for example, we worked with an academic from Liverpool University, and he specialises in looking at the impact that science fiction has on future defence capability. So he was an amazing Imagineer, really creative person, really got some ideas going. Then we have the Visioneer, our second role. That person is a visual storyteller. So they work with the Imagineers throughout the whole process, drawing the scenarios that they're creating, the narratives they're creating, sketching the concepts as they're going on, and then they get refined, and then creating the visuals of the concepts that are produced. Then we have the concept coach. So that's someone who can help the people fulfill their roles and guides the thinking. And then we have the concept guardian. So quite often when you come up with a new concept, they're very fragile. And if they go into an audience of people who haven't been part of the process or haven't had that future world immersion, then they can just crush those ideas. So the concept guardian was nurturing the concept to get it to a decision gate so that it got a fair hearing and was properly considered. So those are the 4 roles. Just as a reminder of 4 stages, we've talked about sparks. Next comes Jackanory, which is the narrative. Third is the questions, and then the popcorn ideation. So I'm going to talk more about questions, but I want you to have a play. Okay, so I want you to define a really crisp how-to question for your own situation or your own organization. Going to help you through it. So we're going to start with a worked example, and then I'll give you some clear instructions, and then you can spend 5 minutes having a think on your own, and then we'll do some sharing. So I want you to imagine that the incoming how-to question, just as a worked example, is how to improve collaboration in hybrid teams. We've got that incoming how-to question. Then what we do is we draw up a 3x5 grid. Across the top, we say three ways, three reasons why that how-to question is important. So why is that important? Well, it will enable us to share knowledge. Why else is it important? Well, we could manage our workload better. Why else is it important? It will give us better solutions. Once you've gone across the top, so you've got breadth, then you go down and you deliver depth, sorry. So why is it important that we share knowledge? Well, it's because it would help us build capability. Why is that important? Well, that will give us better decisions. Why is that important? Well, it'll help us lower risk. Why is that important? It will improve our margins. Okay, obviously this is good. It's a worked example. This will be tailored for what you want to talk about. And then you can imagine doing the rest. So you filled in your 5x3 grid, and then you look at it and you go, do you know what? If I could put better decisions and minimizing time spent or going more quickly, would that give me a better question? Would that question deliver an answer to a root cause rather than a manifesting symptom? Would it give me a question that opens up more useful, more helpful creativity? So use the laddering to look at which bits might give you a better question or a better articulated question. So here I've highlighted a couple that look more interesting, and that's enabled me to rewrite the how-to question to be how to enable fast, low-risk decisions across hybrid teams. Now, compared to collaboration, this is much more specific. You can see how that's going to generate solutions that are much more applicable, actionable, will deliver collaboration, but in a very particular way. So that's the worked example. What I'm going to do now is give you some instructions on how to do this yourself when we go into the personal reflection in a second. So first up, write down your incoming how-to question. It should be phrases how to or how can we, ... fill the dots in, question mark. So how to or how can we. Then draw yourself up a 3x5 grid and start with the breadth across the top. Why is it important that we collaborate better, or whatever it is in your how-to question? So go across the top and then work downwards. All of the things you write in the grid have to be positive. If they're not positive, it all goes a bit weird. So you just need to trust me on that. Okay, so you filled your grid in. Step 3 is choose elements of statements in the grid that you think, do you know what, that would take me to a different, more helpful place. And then use those to find a better way of articulating your how-to question. So it's 4 steps. It's a small group. So do we have any questions on the task, this task? We'll take general questions at the end, but specifically for this task. Okay, no immediate questions. Right, I'm going to go on a mute. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. If you would prefer to ask your question directly to me, my number is on the screen there. So if you see me answer the phone, I'm not on the phone to my mum, all right? It's because I've answered the phone from one of you guys who might have a question about this task. So 5 minutes, I'll put it on my kitchen timer, and then we'll come back and do some sharing, not of the content because that's confidential to you, but talk about the light bulbs that you've had as a result of this. So 5 minutes. Okay, so that was your 5 minutes. Um, what light bulbs did you have? When you look back across it, what things occurred to you um, about the process, about the result? What light bulbs have you had?
I
Let's see
could
what
see in
we've
the
got
chat
in chat.
that Victoria said she's still working on hers, and I have to
Oh,
say I was still working on mine. So I think actually one of the light bulbs is when you properly thinking through a problem, then it takes an awful lot longer than you think it's going to take. Because at the
it
start you
really
think, oh,
does.
5 minutes take is a long time, but it
Yeah.
very much isn't a long time.
Totally agree. Yeah, when we do a laddering activity, we generally allow about half an hour. Yeah. Oh, yes, Victoria, you're right. It is a little bit like the five whys. So the five whys go deeper. We go broad and then deeper. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's like the five whys. Graham, your thinking process is a bit cloudy. I know that feeling. Absolutely. Yeah, so as I say, we normally do it as a group. So you bounce off each other. And what's interesting when you do that is that you end up with different perspectives. So not everyone has the same perspective of the situation. So we use this to help refine and redefine the question. And what I always say to people is that you don't have to redefine the question. Um, it's up to you. It comes from, have you had the stimulus in the laddering activity to want to rewrite the question? Although I have to say, I've never been in an activity where we haven't rewritten the question. But it's part of getting the group of people in front of you that you're working with to really interrogate and understand the challenge space, the problem space, so that their minds are prepared to actually go and do something about it. Yes, and you're right, Victoria. It's similar to questions you use when shaping problem statements. That's exactly the purpose of it. Happy to take other comments verbally or by chat because there's not many of you here. Um, but if not, I will crash on. Okay. So, Imaginate, you've just had a real short taster there of one of the tools within the 4 steps of Imaginate. But I think you can start to see the power of that and how it can be applicable cross-sector. Imagine it works anywhere. We've used it in defence, business, public sector, and for social impact as well. So just by way of example, we run sandpits a lot. And the most recent one that we ran for the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, the EPSRC, is they ran one on respiratory health. And what they were finding is that people with any form of lung disease struggle to get early diagnosis. So the question that we put to the academics in the sandpit was, how can you reach early diagnosis of lung disease using an app and breath sounds? And we had all sorts of people in the room, from sound engineers to um, clinical staff on lung disease, to app developers, to AI and data analytics. And they formed cross university, so multiple university research proposals. And there were 6 proposals put forward, 4 of which received funding from a 2 million funding pot. And they're conducting research on that right now. In defence, we've spoken about this. The Museum of the Future enabled strategic decisions to be reframed in the MOD and in the corporate environment, particularly in small and medium-sized businesses, accessing capability development in a way that they've not been able to before, and really democratizing development. So let's talk about the game you need to change. You want game-changing concepts? What is the game that you need to change? Those are my contact details there. Very happy now to take any questions or comments that occur to you.
Thank you, Helen. Has anyone got any questions, particularly for Helen? I know the one that I'm burning to ask, which is not to do with your methodology, but how did you find a Russian gangster's associate was my initial one when you started. I was like, wow. But no, in all seriousness, any questions from anyone regarding that technique? No, Victoria, you put in chat, you'll reflect on the technique and how it might be helpful when we support staff. So that's really good.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. I have a very good black book, is the answer, Zena. And
Yeah,
you
that is a good
ask,
plan, but
yeah, you ask if you find a good contact, then you ask them who do they know, and on you go from there. The tricks of networking.
brilliant. Well, unless anyone has any burning questions for Helen, then we will pull this session to a close. Can't believe we are in December and rapidly heading towards 2025. But if you are intrigued by anything you've heard from Helen today, then please do get in touch. She has left her contact details on the screen, and I'll also share those when I share the recording. And also, if you have any wants or needs that you think Ideas UK could support you with, whether that's the Ideas UK accreditation and our audit process, looking at how you're doing now, where you want to be, identifying those strengths and celebrating those with you, but also working through those areas that potentially could deliver even more for the organisation, and also the myriad of training courses that we run too. So if you do have any needs, then please do get in touch. Otherwise, keep your eyes peeled for our new set of sessions coming up in 2026. And we'll shortly be releasing our first date in January for you. So, yeah, stay tuned. Have a fabulous December. Enjoy all of the festive celebrations and Christmas. And thank you very much for being part of the Ideas UK network. Thank you. See you next
Thanks
year.
all. Take care. Bye.